Okay, today we are going to be making my homemade whole wheat bread. And so I'm going to help y'all through this little process and hopefully maybe troubleshoot some things because I had a lot of difficulties when I very first started making bread, so I hope this will help. Okay, the first part of this, you're going to proof your yeast, and it calls for 1 package active dry yeast or 1 cake compressed yeast, 1/4 cup of water, 2.5 cups hot water. I just combined it in here into 2 3/4 cups of hot water. Now you don't want it too hot. If it's too hot that you put your finger in it and it burns, you're going to kill your yeast. So don't, just have it pretty warm, but not hot. So I have 2 3/4 cups of hot water in there. I have a 1/2 cup of brown sugar compressed because you want it to be sweet, 3 teaspoons salt, 1/4 cup of shortening is what it calls for, but I just use oil, just regular old vegetable oil will do fine. It always works the same. And this is the particular kind of yeast that I like to use. This is Fleshman's Active Dry Yeast. And if you have some old recipe books like I do, it will a lot of times like give you cakes of yeast. But if you turn it on the back over here, see where it says it? Right here. It gives you conversions as far as cakes go. I think I looked up the cakes, but it gives you conversions for how much this dry yeast is compared to a package. So let's get started. So you'll need a mixer. You can do all this by hand, by the way. You don't necessarily need to have a KitchenAid. I'm just very grateful and fortunate that I have one. So these are the 2 attachments that I'll be using. So we can go ahead and get started. So what you're going to do is you have your hot water in here. Go ahead and throw in your oil. Make sure and get all that in there. Your salt. And your brown sugar. Okay, now we're going to put on this paddle attachment. This thing always confuses me sometimes on how to get it on there. Okay, and you want to get the sugar and all this ingredients really good and mixed up because, hold on, I'll show you here in a second. It's about to get noisy. Yeast is a fungus, so it is a living thing. Throw some biology in here. And so in order to make this grow and thrive for your bread, you have to supply it with certain things. Temperature has to be optimal, which is why we have it warm. Warm is always good for any type of living creature. You also have to supply it with food, which is what the sugar's doing. So whenever, I'll open up this yeast jar real quick, that way you can see. This yeast, it looks like tiny little granules. And actually that's the fungus's defense mechanism. Whenever it's times of drought, natural yeast will do something. It won't look exactly like this, but they'll actually make a capsule in not prime living conditions, and this actually they're able to stay dormant, so to speak, for a long time, years, until optimal environments come around. And that's basically what we're giving this right here, is the optimal environment for it to thrive in. Food, warmth, so it's able to reproduce. Okay, that's good and mixed up. Now, it calls for 1 package active dry yeast. So what we're going to do is look on the back portion of this and see what it says. 2 1/4 teaspoons. is what the conversion is. So, we shall do that. You know, one of my biggest issues whenever I was first making bread was I could not figure out how to get the yeast activated. I don't even know how many loaves of bread that I absolutely just messed up. But I wasn't, either had the water too hot or not hot enough. So we'll just give this a light little stir. And that'll be good. So the question still remains, how do you know whenever this yeast is active? Because that was my biggest issue. Well, this will get extremely foamy. And what you're going to want to do is let this sit for about 10 minutes. And we'll come back in 10 minutes. And I'll show you what it looks like then. But, as you can see, some of it is kind of getting a little frothy. If we can zoom in on this just a little bit. It's hard to tell. It's kind of fun. Ah, there we go. You see this part right here? It is duplicating. And that's what you're going to want to look for. There's a lot of recipes that I've had to modify. For instance, if it just calls for warm water activating yeast, I've never had any luck activating yeast with warm water. It just doesn't work. I've never had any luck with warm milk either. But if the recipe does call for that, for just warm water or just warm milk, just warm it up and just throw like a teaspoon or so of sugar in there. I mean, as long as it has a tiny bit of food, it's going to activate. Period. I mean, no questions asked. And you can see how fast that all of this fungus is like, yeah, I got food. So they're doing their thing, reproducing. That's why we got wonderful things like bread and beer. Whoever thought to put something growing out in the wild in some flour and egg and mix it up? Who knows? Okay, well, we'll come back in 10 minutes and take a look at this, and I'll show you the next step.